Support comes from Seattle Restored, revitalizing Seattle neighborhoods with creativity and commerce. Over 95 vacant storefronts have been transformed into vibrant pop-up shops, window art installations, and artist residences. Explore current and past locations at seattlerestored.org.
Support comes from Cambium Landscape, since 1998 collaborating with their clients, architects, and interior designers to create landscapes that complement their lifestyles, providing design, construction, and maintenance. Designing now for summer outdoor dining and recreation. Portfolio at cambiumlandscape.com.
Well, it is a new year. That means there's new books to read. Hundreds of them, in fact. It's overwhelming, honestly. I am Katie Campbell, and this is Meet Me Here, KUOW's Arts and Culture podcast. And this week, we are hitting the books, but only the books we loved last year, because we don't got time for those other books. And we're doing that with Spencer Ruchti from Third Place Books. We're going to talk about the cream of the crop in 2025, the books that stuck with us. And we're going to take a peek at some of the books that you, frankly, slept on. Yeah, you. I'm talking to you. There are hundreds more books to add to your list. I know this. I just updated my list in 2026. We are going to tell you what to look out for this year and help you set those reading goals. That's all coming up in just a second. But first, let me tell you about an event I'm really excited about. Do you like parties? Do you love your local library? Okay, what about a party at your local library? Because on January 24th, the Broadview branch is celebrating their 50th anniversary. They're going to have live music. They're going to have prizes. Everybody who loves books should come out and celebrate this really cool branch that was only made possible by library patrons like you who fought for what they wanted so that they could have all of the great things that a library gives us there with easier access, and they still celebrate it today. So you like books, you like fighting for libraries, you like to go to a little party now and then? Check out this event.
Support comes from Seattle Restored, revitalizing Seattle neighborhoods with creativity and commerce. Over 95 vacant storefronts have been transformed into vibrant pop-up shops, window art installations, and artist residences. Explore current and past locations at seattlerestored.org.
Support comes from Pacific Science Center. Pack-size camps for curious minds offer more than 100 summer camps for grades pre-K through 8 across the Seattle area, with new locations in Kenmore and Bothell. More info available at packsci.org/camps.
All right, Spencer Ruchti is here at last. Spencer is the author events manager at Third Place Books. Hey, Spencer, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Katie. I'm very excited to be here. This is a first-time caller, but a long-time listener, so very happy to be on the show.
Yeah, for folks who don't know, Third Place Books also sponsors the KUOW Book Club newsletter. Like, y'all are coming to all of our events. We love Third Place, and I've been wanting to get you in the hot seat for a hot second. So now that I've got you there, we're going to start with my favorite question. What is your literary hot take?
I love hardcover books. I know they cost more. I understand that they're a little harder to, hold in your delicate hands, but I really do think that they look so much better on a shelf. If you've walked into a bookstore these days, you will see plenty of, hardcovers, beautiful hardcovers on the shelf with sprayed edges. We call these deluxe editions. They're kind of like the Porsche of books in a way. But I would say there is an increasing movement to get rid of hardcovers altogether and replace them with paperback editions of books, like right out the gate, rather than waiting 12 months to produce a paperback. And I just heartily disagree. I have an enormous collection of signed books that I've, accrued over the year.
Yeah.
And those always taste a little bit better in hardcover, in my opinion.
There's something about a signed hardcover. You're just like, why, yes, I am that person. But all right, let's move along to 2025 in books. How was your year in books, Spencer?
I read less than I think I have in the last 5 years, and yet I think my reading was deeper and it was a little more informed. It was a little more widespread. I'm a big reader of literature and translation, so that makes up about half of my reading. But then I really started a trend of reading books on the tech industry and also antitrust books. So Cory Doctorow was one of my big authors this year. Cory Doctorow, whose most recent book is In Shitification. I love that guy. One of my favorite books of the year was Karen Howe's Empire of AI, which is about Sam Altman and the creation of OpenAI. A lot of really fascinating history, horrifying and terrifying history as well. But, this is a character who has influenced all of our lives.
Yeah. So obviously, these are topics that were on a lot of people's minds in the news a lot in 2025. But what were you trying to understand about tech?
Yeah, obviously, bookstores have a long history with tech oligarchs coming and trying to kind of gut our industry. Despite all of that, bookstores are alive and well, especially in the Seattle area. So I really approach these books from a perspective of, I love what Cory Doctorow writes when he writes about antitrust in tech and specifically about Amazon, basically like what these companies do to extract information and value from their consumers and from their, supposed business partners. And I love that he is such a strong advocate for that economic justice. And it makes me feel better, when I read him, and it makes me feel smarter when I read him as well.
That's so cool. I mean, you said earlier that you read less but deeper, and that's coming through here. I'm getting that vibe. And I wish there was a way to capture those deeper reads. Sometimes I really get into something that I'm like, I wish adult book reports was still a thing. So I want to tell everybody about this. There is kind of one way you can capture that. I read less, but I got into it. And that's to track what you're reading. Do you use anything like that, like Storygraph?
I do. I've had a spreadsheet, just a basic Excel spreadsheet for the longest time. It doesn't give me any useful stats, though, I keep track of everything from when I started a book to when I finished it to what, where I procured the book, because that's often important to me.
Yeah.
And then also what format I read it in. That could be paperback or hardcover, or maybe I got it from the library. I think it's a shield I use to maintain that pleasure and kind of separate reading from work.
But what does that give you to make your Excel sheet and be like, yes, I started this book on this day and da-da-da-da?
Oh, yeah. Mostly it's just so I can keep track of what I've started and what I've finished.
Okay.
I am typically reading in various formats, probably 5 or 8 books at a time. I'm often starting things and then I'll get a little bit into it, maybe enough to talk about it, and then, put it on a stack of to be read books, and then I forget about it for a year. So at the beginning of every year in January, it's usually my cleanup season. So right now I am looking at all of the books I started but loved but did not finish in 2025, and I'm going through those and I'm finally finishing them and trying to kind of round out my year.
What?
And that is just the consequence of trying to do too much at once. When those authors come into the store and want to talk to you, it's not like any author expects you to have read their book, cover to cover. But it is a huge bonus, and it is wonderful for relationship building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my goodness, I feel stressed just thinking of your cleaning season. So I'm almost scared to ask you my next question, which is, do you set reading goals? Are you a 100+ books a year kind of guy?
I try for 100+. Typically, I only get to maybe 70 or so that I'm actually completing in a given year.
Okay, same. I feel better now.
And then a lot that get left by the wayside.
Wow.
I will say my actual hot take for reading and literature is, if you don't love a book or enjoy a book within 10 pages and it's just not hitting you, you can put it down. That's my actual hot take.
10 pages? That's rough.
At a sentence level, you just feel something is wrong, then at a sentence level, that's not going to change throughout the course of the book.
Yes to putting down the books that don't serve us. Okay, so what about at the store? Set the scene for me. What topics, what ideas are resonating with third place readers in 2025? Are we talking
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Climate horror, fairy smut, depressed lady in the big city, the Berg Sitter?
A little bit of everything, but I would say that romance and romantasy were still queen this year, top of the charts in popularity. Romantasy is simple. It's the combination of fantasy and romance novels. So essentially a fantasy novel, so there can be dwarves, dragons, fantasy elements, magic, in which kind of the central plot line is a romance plot line.
Perfect.
Our bestseller list every year is skewed pretty deeply by our author events.
Oh, sure.
And two of our biggest author events this year were with Sen-Lin Yu, who's a romantasy writer out of Portland, and Callie Hart, UK writer who writes these books called Quicksilver, and her new one is Brimstone.
Yes.
So two very popular authors on, but in very different veins of the kind of the romantasy genre. Sen-Lin Yu wrote this book, Alchemize, that there's a specific subgenre of Harry Potter fan fiction called Dramione fan fiction, which is fan fiction in which a Draco Malfoy type character and a Hermione Granger type character are the love interests in the book.
Yeah.
So it's amazing because it's like a totally different subgenre than the Callie Hart, like TikTok popular romantasy subgenre. And it was just so interesting to see them like talk about how people have reacted to their work. They had readers in Ukraine who were writing them to say how basically the way that Sen-Lin Yu was depicting war on the page like really resonated with these people. I don't know how these trends are going to last. If Harry Potter fan fiction will be next year's trend, I have no insight into a lot of that. But whatever it is, there will be something else,
yeah.
And we'll be here to receive that.
Millennials getting a weird comeback in 2026 with their Harry Potter fanfic. Good for us. Okay, so we mentioned fan fiction, romance. What other trends came up for readers at Third Place in 2025?
The other interesting trend we're seeing is that older books, we call them backlist. We're seeing a lot of older books come to the forefront, and suddenly our customers are asking for them because of things that they see online. So one great example is the novel Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, which was translated by Ross Schwartz many decades ago. And suddenly it was picked up about 10 years ago by publisher, very small publisher in Berkeley called Transit Books. They've had it on their catalog for probably maybe 8 years before suddenly it just exploded on TikTok, which is, usually the sort, whenever we're asking, like, why are people buying this book that we're not familiar with? Typically 8 times out of 10, the answer is TikTok. It's difficult to explain, like, just how popular some of these books are and just how much they are selling as a result of online chatter. But just to give an example, Transit Books publishes Who Have Never Known Men. That book is basically single-handedly carrying their business, forward year after year.
Wow.
So thank goodness for TikTok, I suppose you can say.
It's like TikTok or Hollywood influencing people's TBR. And it really can. It can make a big difference.
Yeah. Hamnet was a huge deal this year because of the movie that came out that Chloe Zhao directed. Wonderful film. And then just today, I was talking to a customer who came in asking for A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. And we haven't been able to keep it in stock for weeks. I was like, what is going on? I even asked her. I was like kind of so fed up. I was like, do you know, like, why are you interested in this? Why? Not accusing her of anything, and she said, it was on Stranger Things. I was like, oh, yeah, right. That'll do it. Just happen. One mention. Yeah.
Kate Bush knows exactly how that goes, huh?
Exactly. Yep.
And now that song is in all of your ears. Okay, so, we're talking a lot about, like, the algorithm, right? How the algorithm can influence what people are reading, how TikTok influences it. But what about the store's top 10? When people go to Third Place Books and say, what are the 10 books from 2025 I need to look at? Is it the algorithm? Is that what you guys are relying on? Or is it people? Is it the booksellers?
The wonderful thing about how we determine our top 10 books of the year is it's extremely organic. Every single bookseller in our store has across all 3 of our locations actually has an opportunity to submit their personal top 10 of the year. So there is a little bit of convincing and cajoling, like especially if you've been at the store for as long as I have, like how this process goes down. So sometimes you might add something to your list that other people are going to vote for. Otherwise, I might just make a list of 10 of the most obscure books that I read that year that I liked, and then none of them will appear on the list. So there is like a little bit of sacrifice and a little bit of wiggle, but those books often end up on our year and bestseller lists because at the during December, like we don't have any events. So it's just kind of organic sales. It's what people are coming in and picking up. And often people are just walking to a bookstore, and that is the only time that they walk into a bookstore that year.
Yeah.
So if they see a big display that says these are our top 10 books of the year, naturally they are, they find themselves attracted to that.
Totally. That's smart. I like that. And if you're only going into a bookstore once a year, get it together. All right, we're going to include the top 10 from Third Place Books in the show notes, by the way. But Spencer, what's the book you and booksellers think people slept on, unless they were like really in the know?
All right. I have the perfect book, a book that has really swept booksellers by storm, especially over the last 2 years, because it's part of a series, is On the Calculation of Volume by Solvej, Balle. It's in its third volume this year. So 2 volumes were translated and published last year by New Directions, and we got the third volume this year. But it is essentially the best pitch, I think, for it is a Danish Groundhog's Day. So it's about a woman who is an antiquarian book collector who gets stuck on the same day, November 18th, over and over again. So she wakes up every morning and it is still November 18th.
Okay.
The problem with describing it as a Groundhog's Day is then people assume it's funny. This one is very much not. I mean, there is still some humor and some lightness to it. Enough that it makes it enjoyable, but it is much more existential, which I think that is how a lot of us normal human beings would probably approach the issue of being stuck in time.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Is with maybe a little bit of dread, maybe a little bit of claustrophobia. But what's interesting is that she plays it so seriously, and this is the third book of 7 volumes came out this year, and the author plays this concept off so seriously that you wonder, and you are compelled to wonder, how she's going to pull it off. Because we still have 4 more volumes to, figure that out.
But why do people sleep on it if it's so awesome?
One, because it is a book in translation. I think a lot of people sleep on literature in translation because they think it might be too difficult, or because of that, there's kind of a false narrative around like the fact that, if a book has kind of an intermediary between the original writer and the reader, that it is, lesser than other books, which is of course just demonstrably false. But I think there's like kind of that fear of difficulty, or even fear of, in the case of this series of books, a lack of humor. I find that a lot of regular readers are kind of afraid to feel sadness or dread, for example, when they're reading. I remember earlier this year, we hosted another romantasy author named Penn Cole. And typically for these events for like romantasy authors, we're getting a lot of people in the store who haven't been in the bookstore, in any bookstore for quite a while. Yeah. For a lot of them, it's their first author event. Sometimes they're meeting an author for the first time with various degrees of trepidation. I remember one woman in particular was a human rights lawyer, and she said, I have to deal with so much tragedy in my life. I love reading your books because they're still serious and they're still like, about war, but in a fantasy sense, like kind of a Tolkien sense. But I feel like it's an escape from what I have to do in my day to day while still engaging with books. Yeah. And I will never forget that. If people look down on people who read genre fiction or romance, you don't know from what place in their person's life that they are approaching literature. And I think from any direction is absolutely valid.
Okay, Spencer, one last thing before we let you go. This is recommended if you liked reading in 2025 and you want to keep it going in 2026.
I will always recommend going to your local library branch and spending a Saturday there. I always recommend, especially for total nerds, like finding something that you can fixate on and then like doing some independent research. Yeah. So, for example, last year I took a trip to the Seattle Public Library's Seattle room, which is at the very tippy top of the library. Yeah. You can make an appointment with an archivist and tell them what you're looking for. And I remember I was looking for information about the antiquarian bookstore Shore's, which used to be, before it closed down, one of Seattle's oldest bookstores. Wow. And these archivists will bring you out all kinds of information. They'll give you their undivided attention, and then you can just spend, 4 hours in an afternoon. And in 2026, one thing I have to recommend is the author Álvaro Enrigue. He's a Mexican writer writer. He's living in Brooklyn. He's kind of best known for his this novel, You Dreamed of Empires, which was a reimagining of the conquest of the Aztec Empire by Spanish conquistadors, and just a crazy, like, psychedelic book. You don't have to really know an ounce of history to get it. Like, it's still funny and it's still very present and in the moment. He's just such a terrific writer. But he has a new book coming out in March called Now I Surrender. That's translated by Natasha Wimmer. Álvaro, in fact, is coming to Third Place Books on March 9th. So I'm going to plug that here.
Woo.
He's a total superstar. This is definitely the book for me this year.
Heck yeah, I love to hear that. Well, I'm going to recommend that, first of all, folks, join the KUOW book club. We read 13 phenomenal Pacific Northwest books last year. They were so much fun. We did nature books. We did actually 7 nonfiction, 6 fiction. We had a lot of dark vibes in there. I'm so sorry. That's my fault, but that's just how it goes. You should also check out NPR's Books We Loved list. I think it's curated a little similarly to Third Place Books, but it would take a lot of time and effort to do all of the tallies. So there's like 380 plus books on that list every year. And a couple of noteworthy Pacific Northwest books made the list, including Elita by Kirsten Sundberg Lundstrom, a KUOW book club pick, The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas, a Meet Me Here guest, Tilt by Emma Patty, who I actually interviewed at Third Place Books. I have a lot on my reading list for 2026 already, but one book I'm really excited to read is Crux by Gabriel Tallent. It's this story about an intense friendship between 2 rock climbers. It's been compared to Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, about 2 video game developers who have this really fraught friendship that turns into a business partnership that kind of goes haywire. It was a phenomenal book. I'm really excited to see that kind of relationship in the rock climbing sphere. I don't rock climb, but I love books about rock climbing. Anyway, I've seen this on a few lists of some of the best fiction coming up this year. So those are a couple of ways that you can start your reading year off right in 2026. Spencer, thank you so much for this. This has been so much fun.
This is great. Yeah, thank you for the invitation, Katie, and let's do it again sometime.
And thank you for listening to Meet Me Here. Meet Me Here is produced by KUOW, a proud member of the NPR network. It's hosted by me, Katie Campbell, Dyer Oxley, and Jeannie Yandel. And it's produced by Brandy Fullwood, Kyle Norris, and Matt Martin. You can find more and support the show at kuow.org/meet. Let's meet up again, y'all.
Everything is expensive in Seattle. But when it comes to restaurants, I got a lot of tricks and tips up my sleeve to help diners eat well in this city. I'm Ton Ben, host of Seattle Eats, a food podcast from the Seattle Times and KUOW, part of the NPR network. I'll share about the latest buzz in the Seattle food scene, like the hottest openings and the best bites that are worth your money. Listen now to Seattle Eats on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.